This is the video portion for Assignment 3 in COMP482. Project Scope and Purpose of Design. The scope of this project was to design a system in which users, such as office clerks, floor associates, and supervisors, were able to perform their daily tasks in a warehouse using an inventory management system. The purpose of the design was to make it as simple and effective for different employees to use. This was accomplished by ensuring that menus were clear, buttons were easy to use, error checking was made on relevant fields, and the ordering and sequence of screens made sense. The main tasks that are covered in the interface. Some tasks that were covered in the interface included being able to access the warehouse inventory as a floor associate, finding information such as description, location, price, last date ordered, last date received, and current quantity in stock of a specific part. Another task was to add or remove a specific quantity of a part to and from stock, as is the case when a floor associate accidentally picks too many or too few of a part, and the mistake is later caught by another person doing auditing for the delivery that would be shipped out. When considering office clerks, the interface implements a login system and allows clerks to create order tickets and receive shipments into the system. The system also handles orders and shipments that contain parts from the Department of National Defense, which require special authorization from a supervisor to put on an order or shipment. Description of how walkthroughs were performed. Walkthroughs consisted of attempting to perform a few set tasks that enabled the testing of all of the text fields, the functionality of the buttons, and ensuring that the program was executing correctly. These tasks included being a floor associate and checking the location of a specific part in stock, during which an invalid part name was used to ensure that the system notifies the user to enter a valid part number along with a helpful hint. Another task was to have a floor associate find a part and then add a certain quantity of it to stock, and testing the quantity to add field by leaving it blank or inputting characters which were non-numerical. When this was tested, the system notified the user if they left it blank, but it didn't notify them if they input non-numeric characters. Similar to the previous task, a floor associate would find a part and then remove a certain quantity from stock, performing the same error checking on the quantity to remove field. Another task for the walkthrough was performed as an office clerk creating an order ticket with 3 items on it. During the sign-in, the username and password fields were tested for correct entry by notifying the user if they were left blank or didn't have the correct information entered. When adding a part to the outgoing order list, the field was tested if left blank, to which it notified the user to enter a valid part number. When testing the field for non-numeric characters, the system simply did nothing. If numeric characters were used that didn't match any of the part numbers, the system also did nothing. If portions of a part number or the full part number were included in the search, then that part would get added to the list. A similar task as the previous one was completed for testing the processing of an incoming shipment. This time, though, when getting to the incoming shipment window, which is very similar to the outgoing order window, items needed to be removed from the list to imitate what happens if the clerk is stopped midway through receiving a shipment and the shipment needed to be canceled. The same problems as the previous task were present, but the functionality of the Remove Item button was tested and worked correctly. The last task for the walkthroughs involved having a part from the Department of National Defense added to an order, to which the system alerted the user and asked them to get a supervisor to authorize the transaction. The process for entering a supervisor username and password was handled no input and incorrect input properly. Details of how different low-fidelity prototypes were developed and evaluated. The storyboards from Assignment 1, which can be seen on this screen, were used as a starting point for developing the prototype completed in this assignment. This screen was used as part search, which was for floor associates, whereas this screen here was the initial screen for office clerks. Initially, there were going to be two separate ones, as if there was going to be two separate systems, one in the office and one on the floor for the floor associates. But for consistency's sake, I realized that it would be efficient to simply include one home screen, which was will be shown in the other prototype. And this one home screen allowed the user to indicate whether they were an office clerk or a floor associate, and have the system go different ways after that. The parts list screen, which is located here, didn't need to have this add to order button, since that functionality is only necessary for office clerks. So it could instead be used just on the outgoing order or incoming shipment pages that office clerks use exclusively. After an office clerk enters the part number required for the outgoing order or incoming shipment, it was unnecessary to open up the part information screen. So that would have occurred here. After they click create order, they have this screen, they click add item, and when they would have entered the part number, there was no need for it to go to the part information screen. It was extra steps for no reason. Instead, the system was adapted, and I realized that after adding the item, putting in the right part number, it would just show up here, and then the user could manually click the part quantity of the row that they wanted to change, and they could type in the quantity that they wanted. And then once everything was added, they could simply submit order and it would be done. So that avoids this screen, and well, this is the same screen, but yeah, so that streamlines the process a little bit for that. And then with the small checkboxes, which was on this screen, so I originally had it planned for incoming shipment or outgoing order. So whenever an item wanted to be removed from this list, checkboxes would appear. So remove item, the checkboxes would appear, and then you would check which items you wanted to remove and you would confirm removal. Instead of doing that, I simply made it so these items were highlightable. So you basically just highlight whichever items you wanted to remove, and then you would click remove item and they would vanish, which was just a much faster and more streamlined process than what I had previously. So after making all of these changes to the prototype created in assignment 1, some improvements that still need to be made to the current prototype are when entering the system as a floor associate and going through with a process, there should be a button on succeeding pages to go back to previous pages or simply back to the home page, which would ideally be used when a part was found or a quantity of a part in stock was done being manipulated. Through some of these tasks, when going through the floor associate tasks, I realized that it would have been nice to be able to go back to previous screens if you wanted to do a different, if you wanted to go through the menu differently. But unfortunately, the only way to accomplish this was to click the big red X at the top right of the screen, which just isn't very effective. It'd be much better to have an item or a button on the screen that says go back or exit or something like that. Another improvement was the error checking fields when non-numeric input was entered need to be improved. They should notify the user that they can only enter numerical input, and they also need to ensure that the part number entered has to match the whole part number for a part, not just a portion of it. So that was a big problem, because if just a portion was entered, you'd be getting a part number that you didn't want. This could cause problems as the system gets expanded and becomes more complex. The test data that I only used was 10 items, so not too many issues could be run into, but it could definitely be a problem on a bigger database. Brief overview of the implementation technologies used. The whole system was implemented using Java and made heavy usage of the Java Swing library. Discussion on the design rationale of your interface. The rationale for designing this interface was mainly directed towards ensuring that a variety of users with differing technological skill levels could use the system easily. Simplicity of the system is evident, as this avoids confusion and keeps the different processes relatively streamlined. The interface also needed to ensure that office clerks and floor associates could complete their respective tasks effectively. So the different branches that the system takes, which cater to the type of user interacting with this system, help accomplish this. There are no unnecessary extra functions that don't apply to a floor associate when they are using the system, and the same goes for office clerks. Since parts from the Department of National Defense are tracked by the government, it was important to include a function in the interface that required a supervisor to authorize a transaction, including one of these parts, as losing track of inventory for these parts is a serious issue. Screenshots of my design interface, the upgraded one, include this first one. So this is where we get to choose office clerk or floor associate. If you choose floor associate, you'll get sent to the part search screen. If this is left blank, you click find part and you'll receive a list of all parts. If you enter anything in this field that is not a portion of a part name, you would get an alert that tells you to enter the right data. After you click that, then you'll get to the parts list. So you'd pick any item you want. You are only able to select one item at a time. After you select the item, it brings you to the part information page. You see the information you need. You can choose to add or remove, and it'll come up with another text box, and then you can do that. Here is the screen that would show up if you chose office clerk instead of floor associate. So here, right, floor associate. This is the office clerk one. You would have to put in a proper username and password. If either of these fields were incorrect, it would alert you, and then you'd have to put in the right one. Then you log in, and then you can choose to create an order ticket or process a shipment. If we create an order ticket, you would get this outgoing order field. You add your items, and you would type in the item that you would like, and then it would appear up here. And if you want to remove an item, you just click one of the rows, or you can select multiple rows and remove them. And then you can submit the order, and then it gives you a notification letting you know that you submitted it. This is the same thing, but instead of going to order ticket, you would click process shipment, and then this screen would show up. Pretty much the same functionality as the outgoing order page. And then this is the one scenario where a Department of National Defense part is detected. So those parts in my system have the letter D preceding the part number. And then, so if you input the correct username and password, it was good. If you put in the wrong data, it would notify you until you put in the right data. And then after you enter, the screen would disappear and the part would appear here. And then you could submit your order. And that completes all of it.